much for tuning in. So today I'm going to just be sharing a fun little Halloween themed palette that I put together using some single eyeshadows from my collection. And I know that I'm putting this up quite late, but you know, personally, in my defense, I feel as if Halloween should run all the way through October and November, like up until like Halloween. So I'm gonna be probably continuing along with the spooky vibes all the way up until then, but I know it's almost over. But this is the palette that I'm housing my singles in. This is, if you can see past these decorations that I've obviously put on here. This palette is from the brand Altair Beauty, and it's a black marble design. So I'm not sure if they still make this design, but they're a brand that does a bunch of different magnetic empty palettes. So that's that. This here is a spider web window decal. So I just decided to put it on an eyeshadow palette instead. And then I have these stickers here, which are all Halloween themed. This one's definitely my favorite. It's hard to tell on the palette itself, but it's a black ghost with orange eyes. I absolutely love it. But let me get into the actual contents of the palette. So this is what I came up with. There are 14 different shades here. And I have two rows, as you can see. This top row here are mattes and the bottom row are shimmers. I wasn't initially intending to have like coordinating mattes for all of the shimmers, but it just so happened that, you know, when I was going with the Halloween color scheme, you know, I was obviously pulling colors from that color scheme, and so it just so happened that I was pulling both mattes and shimmers, and after a certain point I noticed I was getting like basically coordinating mattes and shimmers. So once I noticed that, I kind of just like ran with it and continued doing that throughout the rest of the palette. I also noticed that I pulled shades from 3 different brands in particular. So I only have 3 brands in this entire palette. I really did not go into this with the intention of doing that. I thought since this is such a unique color scheme that I would end up with single eyeshadows from like 10 different brands, but I actually just ended up with 3 different brands. There were a few shades off the top of my head that I knew that I wanted to include in this palette. For example, these 2 here, neon shades, which I feel like they're not really showing up that great on camera, but they're like neon. These 2 are from Terra Moon's Cosmetics. I knew I wanted to put these in here. I knew I wanted to put this shade in here and this shade in here, and those are both from Sydney Grace. I knew I wanted to put this shade here and this shade in here, and those are both from ColourPop. And so it just happened to work out that, you know, all the colors that I kind of wanted and needed were across these 3 different brands. So that's how that ended up working out. So I'll leave links to all of these shades in the description box in case you're interested in any particular shade. I don't think any of these should be discontinued, with the exception maybe of ColourPop, because ColourPop discontinues things left and right. That's kind of their MO. So, but otherwise you should be able to find most, if not all of these shades. Let's go ahead and get into the swatches. So this first shade here is called Geese Alang, and this is a Sydney Grace shade, and it is a matte yellow. And today was actually my first time using this shade, and I was actually really impressed with it. It's actually very good for yellow. Well, it's a good shade, but it's a good yellow, which is hard to come by. So I really appreciated this color. I did use it in my eye look today. By the way, the eyeshadow look that I have on, I did create 100% using the palette. So I'll kind of go through the shades that I used as I talk about each shade. But I did use this shade in today's look, not as a feature color or anything, more so as a transition shade. It's the shade, the lightest shade that you can kind of see between my brow bone and that sort of brighter orange shade. So that's Geese Alang, a shade from Sydney Grace, and a pretty good yellow matte if you are in the market for one. The next shade is this really bright neon yellow from the brand Terra Moon's Cosmetics. This is called Starlight, and I was really curious to try this brand in particular because they had these neon shades. So I took advantage of a sale that they had a couple months back, and they do seem to have this sale pretty often. It's buy 2 get 1 free. So just in case you were ever wondering or ever interested in checking out something from this brand, just know that they do have sales pretty often. If you just like kind of keep up with their social media, they post about it. But this is a really beautiful, just like literal highlighter green neon shade. I've used this and the next shade I'm going to show in my inner corner. So there's like a darker green, and then this green, which is the sort of brightest color that you see in my inner corner. and it was really easy to work with. I have actually used this shade before as well as the other neon I'm going to show you, and so far I've been really impressed with these, especially because I've heard that neons tend to be very hard to work with. So far so good on these. I might actually do a review on the collection that they have in the future, because I know that neons are so hard to come by, or at least good ones anyways. The next shade is another neon from Terra Moon's Cosmetics, and this is the shade Neverland. So this is just a bright neon green. I will say that these neon shades, they're definitely very powdery, so you want to be careful with them. But again, as you can see, I mean, they're really bright, and I love these two together. I think they coordinate very nicely. The next shade is our first ColourPop shade in the palette, and this is the shade Bratty, and I can see that I have kind of a dip going in there. I think this is just one of those shades that's also quite powdery, and this is just a really bright orange. I thought I had more of these types of colors throughout my collection, because I just off the top of my head felt like I had a lot of oranges, but I do feel like typically my oranges tend to be a little bit more muted, and so this one is actually surprisingly one of the only brighter ones that I have, so I thought it fit in this palette perfectly. Terra Moon's Cosmetics also makes a neon orange called Mercury in Retrograde, I believe, and I have that as well, but I figure since I already have these two neons, it'd be nice to bring in one shade that was still bright but not quite a neon. The next matte shade in here is also another ColourPop shade, and this is the shade Sleeper, and this is just sort of a deep, rich, warmer toned purple shade. And I do have both of these shades on in my eye look today. So the bright orange that you do see in my crease area is the shade Bratty, and then this purple here, Sleeper, it's kind of on my outer V, but I did end up putting another shade kind of sort of on top of it, so you might not be able to see it all that well, but it is a really nice rich purple. This next shade is by Sydney Grace, and it is the shade Redeemed. I wanted to do a cooler tone purple in addition to the warmer tone, so this is a really nice one. And Sydney Grace has a very nice matte formula. They do tend to be on the softer side, not super powdery, but they're very pigmented and they blend out very easily. And then the last shade in the first row is just a matte black, and this is the shade Let's Do It by ColourPop. I believe this shade is also in the new Smoke Show palette that they just came out with, and it's just a matte black. It is a pretty good matte black though, I will say that. So this is the first row of all matte shades. I think I'll swatch the shimmers on this arm so that way I can kind of, you know, compare the two. Okay, so in this next row, this first shade we have here is the shade Lemonade, which is by Sydney Grace. And this is a true yellow shimmer, like a really bright yellow shimmer, which is very unique to come by as well. I feel like you just don't see a lot of true yellow shimmers, and this is definitely the brightest one that I have. It was a terrible swatch, but hopefully you can see that. It doesn't look like a shimmer, really, kind of almost looks more like a matte, but I promise you that it is definitely a shimmery shade. This next shade I have here is ColourPop's Deja Boo, and with a name like that, how could I not put it in here? This is actually not one of my favorite shades. By then, as you can see, I'm like rubbing my finger in it quite a bit because I know it takes a little bit for this shade to get some pigment, but it is a really nice color. Again, terrible swatch, but hopefully you can kind of see what it looks like. And I'm just kind of going with the second layer there. I also find that this shade tends to hard pan a bit too, but it is a really unique shade. It's more of like a subtle shade. It's not super metallic, but it does make for a nice sort of more subtle shade that's still a little bit on the brighter side. I do have this shade on. It's on the very inner third of my lower lash line. Next up, this is the shade Emerald Dreams, and this is by Terra Moon Cosmetics. And yeah, the shade is a little bit powdery. I think I was accustomed to how I was rubbing my finger in Deja Boo, and I dug into that one a little bit too hard. But this is a gorgeous shade. It's almost iridescent, but as you can see, it's still extremely pigmented. And I do have this shade on as well. It is the shade that I have on the sort of like inner, well not inner, but like the second third of my lower lash line, I guess. Next up I have Orange Slush, which is by Sydney Grace. And this is just a bright orange shimmer color. I love how this one looks. I'll just show that one to you on my finger. It's very, very pretty. I feel like a lot of people talk about Sydney Grace's mattes for good reason. They're really good, but I also almost equally enjoy their pressed pigment formula as well, because it's a really nice high shine formula and they have some really beautiful colors. This next shade is Vamped, which is also by Sydney Grace, and I believe this one is categorized as a pressed pigment as well, but I honestly feel like this one could really more so be one of their traditional shimmer shades, because this one is a little bit more on the dull side. Like, it almost leans more towards a satin finish shade, but I still do really like the color of it. Again, just kind of like a nice rich, warm, plummy tone. Has a little bit of red in it as well, so I thought that it would be really nice for a Halloween palette. Next up I have Four Winds, which is by Sydney Grace. This is a really deep, rich, cool tone purple, and it is absolutely beautiful. It almost has like a black base to it, but then the actual purple shift in it is very strong, as you can see. Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. I actually have this shade on the outer V of my lid. I wasn't trying to make this like the outer V color, but in conjunction with the the shade right here, Sleeper, it kind of took over a little bit because it's darker than Sleeper, so that happened. But that shade is also on my lid as well. And then lastly I have Night Dream by ColourPop. This one I feel like is the one that fits kind of sort of the least, because it's not technically a shimmer, it really is actually a matte black shade like Let's Do It, but it has these multicolored shimmers running throughout it. I almost put another shade in here that I have from ColourPop called Goody Two Shoes, which is just like this onyx color that's, well, no, not really an onyx, more like a charcoal, but like a really deep charcoal that is a shimmer shade. But I just felt like this, it just matched better, so I went with this. And I actually do want to try this shade out. You can see it does, because of the amount of glitter that it has running through it, it does look like it has like a sheen to it. So it might be promising. I actually, unlike a lot of people, I don't mind dark mattes that have shimmer in them as long as they're done well, because oftentimes I will use a shade like this as long as it's a good formula to do a smoky eye with. So there we have it. Those are the shades that I came up with, and this is the shimmery arm again, and then this, or sorry, this is the matte arm, and then this is the shimmer arm. So you kind of see both of those lined up against one another. And yeah, I really liked this this color scheme that I came up with. Now, like I said, I definitely went a little bit ham with my eye look today because I wanted to use this palette exclusively, which I think I was definitely, you know, able to do. You know, I do have some more kind of like toned down-ish colors, like, well, Brady's like a brighter orange, but you could definitely still use this as like a transition color, which is kind of like what I did today. I have like this color over here, like these could be used as transition shades on me. And then, you know, obviously the much brighter tones as well. So I think it's pretty, for it to be a unique color scheme, I think that there are definitely ways to do complete eye looks with it. Now, I think that I'm actually going to keep a lot of these shades together, or I might kind of like deconstruct this and put some of these shades into like little quads, because I actually want to reach for this, or reach for some of these shades in here, especially like the brighter shades in here, throughout the rest of the fall and maybe even into the winter. Because I feel like the one other thing I love about Halloween is that it's the one time during this time of year, like the colder weather in the fall and winter, where you do get to see brighter colors being used, because I feel like there's so much emphasis on, you know, darker tones and jewel tones and smoky colors, but I feel like brights, they get a little bit neglected. So I feel like Halloween is the one time where you really start to see brights in effect again, in use again. So I feel as if I really want to reach for some of these shades. That basically wraps up this video. If you found it enjoyable and or informative, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for like content. But either way, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!